So since I subdivided a piece of land into multiple parcels, I often get people asking me, what's the process to do so and how do I get it done? So this is what we're going to look into in this video. So the first thing that you have to consider when you want to subdivide a piece of land is what are the rules and regulations of the municipality that you want to do so. Every municipality is different, so I'm not going to cover every rule in there, and I'll just kind of focus on one and give you a bit of insight into what you want to look into. But I'd say if ever this is your goal, the municipal inspector and the team at the municipality should be your best friends. I spent a lot of time speaking to the municipal inspector. We got along well, but it was really important to get all my questions across, because the last thing you want to do is buy a large piece of land and that the project that you have in mind that is lucrative or that you want to get going is not feasible for various reasons. So there's a bunch of things that you have to consider in this whole process. So if I think of the municipality of Austin, where I developed my project, if I look through their website, I could find different things. This is in French, but some municipalities in Quebec might only have a French section to this. But there's different kind of appendices that you can find that will kind of tell you about like how the land is divided. So if I kind of go through some of the documents that they have, I could see a map such as this one here. And you could see along this map that there's different types of land throughout the whole property that we have here. So there's land that are treated as agricultural, there's land that's treated as récréo-touristique or more villégiature. And out of all those pieces of land, they all have their own sets of rules. Like over here, there's a highway, and on one side of the highway, you're allowed to have 3 accessory buildings attached to your main house. Well, not attached, but on the same property. And on the other side, which is more the touristy side, because you're near a national park, you could only have 1. So there's these sets of rules that differ even within the city. So you really want to make sure to know what to look for. And for myself, when I looked through this, one of the main rules that I had to accept to be able to subdivide a piece of land was, 1, the piece of land had to be an acre, the piece of land minimum. And then it had to have, on average, 50 meters of width. And then the other one that's not really mentioned here is that every parcel of land had to touch a main highway or a main road, because you couldn't just create a piece of land that was completely landlocked to the other pieces of land. So those were the 3 regulations I had to deal with. So then afterwards, I found myself a land surveyor, and that land surveyor, or arpenteur in French, would make a basic plan and just kind of go through some of my ideas. I had ideas of where I would situate some houses and what would be the more or less the configuration of land around those houses in this property. And he kind of drew a sketch that would answer those 3 requirements of minimum size, access to a road, minimum width. And then we presented this project to the municipal inspector. Once that project got approved, then we did it officially, and then those lots were created. There's a certain timeline involved with all of this, like it's just a bunch of going back and forth, and then the whole kind of like officializing of the lots takes a bit of time at the Quebec government, but it's a procedure that you have to go through. Okay? And then there's other things that you have to consider. In this municipality, because they didn't really want to have developers buying large plots of lands and just subdividing them and creating lots of houses, they wanted to protect a certain amount of land that would be treated as natural. If you choose to subdivide it into too many lots, then you have a situation where you could have to pay a park tax to the city. And that park tax was either 10% of the value of the project or 10% of the land had to be donated to the city. I managed to get around this because my project consisted of 6 buildable lots, which I kind of merged together, and I recreated 6 buildable lots. So because I didn't expand on how many houses there would be in this project from before and after, they waived that park tax. But it's something else that you have to consider when subdividing. there might be some additional fees or other things that you have to keep in mind. So make sure you read through all the documents of the city. You speak with your municipal inspector. If you're going through a realtor with your piece of land that you're looking at buying, they're normally pretty good at calling them up and asking a bunch of questions, but do your homework. Don't just rely on someone. Ask the right questions to the right people to make sure that your project goes through the way you want it. Last little piece of information, if ever you consider subdividing land. As I mentioned before, if you subdivide in more than 2 lots, it's taxable, you're treated as business income, but the question that remains is what cost do you allocate to each of the pieces of land that you've created? So let's say you buy a parcel of land for $100,000 and now you create it into 4 different lots. What value do you give to each of these lots? Well, there's different ways you could figure this out, and the end idea is that it has to make sense. It has to be kind of justifiable if ever you get investigated by the fiscal authorities. So if you have 4 identical lots, well, you could just kind of split that value and say that each of these lots costs you $25,000 plus the extra fees of land surveyor and so on and so forth, so that whenever you sell it, that is your cost of this product, and there's all the other expenses that could be added onto it, but your initial cost of this good has to be determined. You could also use another technique, which is to subdivide them all, and if the municipality comes and inspects the lots, well, they might say this lot here is worth $30,000, this lot here is worth $50,000, this lot here is worth $80,000, and it gives you a new total. And out of that total, you figure out what percentages are associated to each of the lots, and then you apply that percentage to your initial cost plus the extra fees. And that determines what's the cost of each of these lots. Because it's not true that if you subdivide the property into 2 lots and there's one that's 1 acre and there's one that's 100 acres, that you could just say, well, it's 2 lots. This costs the same amount. Each of them costs the same amount. That's not true. That wouldn't be justifiable. So keep that in mind whenever you decide to open up a business and to subdivide into multiple lots. How will you kind of make something that's verifiable, that is that the fiscal authorities will have no trouble in accepting? Hopefully you understand well the different steps involved of looking up the rules, speaking with the municipal inspector, finding a land surveyor that's going to be able to prepare a rough draft for you and that you'll be able to submit it to your municipal inspector, and he will then be able to approve it, and all the steps involved afterwards once that approval goes through in terms of costs and so on and so forth. If you're interested in all of this, I suggest you guys to go through a certain city, a certain plot of land that's currently available, and try to see what you'd be able to do out of that piece of land. How many lots would you be able to create? Will there be any park tax or any extra fees involved from the municipality? And get back to me on that, and we'll discuss this further in the future. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll talk to you soon. If you found this video interesting, please consider subscribing or joining my class where I guide you to apply and expand on the information found in these videos to real life examples. Have a good day.